In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Across a galaxy consumed by conflict, humanity survives by sheer will. Bound together by faith, fire, and the rivers of blood that never stop flowing. The Imperium of Man stretches across countless worlds, each turned into a bastion against the endless dark. Soldiers fight without hesitation, citizens worship without pause, and Inquisitors hunt corruption with ruthless conviction. Every moment of existence is built on pain and endurance. For in this universe, only through suffering can mankind endure. So when something arrived that refused to take any of it seriously, the universe itself didn't know what to do. The inquisitorial fortress on Carcinus Prime was a monument to paranoia. 3 miles of rockcrete walls, gun batteries pointing both outward and inward, and enough holding cells to imprison an entire hive city's worth of heretics. Inquisitor Halbrecht ran his operation with the precision of a chronometer. Interrogations at dawn, executions at noon, paperwork until midnight. His servitors moved in perfect synchronization. His guards knew that the punishment for falling asleep on duty was becoming a servitor themselves. Which is why the appearance of a man in a red and black costume, lounging in Halbrecht's own command throne with his boots on the armrest, was so profoundly wrong. "Okay, so the intruder said, examining his gloved fingers with exaggerated interest. "I gotta ask, did you guys intentionally go for evil space cathedral aesthetic? Or is this just what happens when you let architects get really, really depressed?" 6 guards lay dead around him. Their throats had been cut with surgical precision. The blast doors, 3 feet of reinforced adamantium, had been somehow wedged open with what appeared to be their own combat knives. And the intruder was eating something from a ration pack, making exaggerated gagging noises. Holy Emperor on a bicycle. This tastes like despair and sawdust had a baby. Do you people ever just eat a taco? Just one taco? It would fix so many problems. Halbrecht stared. He had seen many things in his 70 years of service. He had watched demons crawl from the flesh of screaming psychers. He had personally overseen the execution of an entire planetary government. He had once spent 6 months tracking a genestealer cult through the ventilation systems of a forge world. This was different. The stranger wore no armor, just a skin-tight suit covered in pouches and weapons that looked wrong. Too sleek, too advanced, too colorful for this universe of tarnished steel and faded banners. Twin swords hung across his back. Pistols bristled from holsters at his thighs. But it was the mask that disturbed Halbrecht most. White eyes on red fabric, somehow expressive despite being clearly artificial. Tracking movement with an awareness that felt simultaneously highly trained and completely insane. "Identify yourself, heretic," Halbrecht commanded, his hand moving to his bolt pistol. 20 more guards flooded into the chamber, laser guns raised. Servo skulls descended from the ceiling, recording everything. The stranger pulled his mask up slightly to take another bite of ration bar, revealing scarred skin underneath. "Heretic? Buddy, I've been called worse. Usually by people whose names I actually remember." He swallowed, grimaced. "Okay, so here's the thing. I'm Wade Wilson, but you can call me Deadpool. Yes, it's a pool joke. No, I won't explain it. And I have absolutely no idea how I got here. One minute I'm fighting this guy with a stupid name I forget. There's this bright light and a screaming sound like someone playing dubstep through a meat grinder, and bam! I'm in Grimdark McStabbington's fortress of excessive brooding. "Seize him," Halbrecht ordered. The guards advanced. Deadpool sighed, stood up, and cracked his neck. Okay, but just so we're clear, this is you guys choosing violence. I'm totally cool with talking this out, maybe comparing notes on our respective trauma responses, perhaps sharing a nice... The first guard lunged with a shock maul. Deadpool's hand moved in a blur, catching the weapon mid-swing, redirecting it into the guard's own helmet with a sickening crunch. Before the body hit the ground, Deadpool had drawn both pistols. Not the crude industrial weapons of the Imperium, but elegant chrome pieces that barked with a sound like thunder compressed into a whisper. 3 guards dropped, perfect holes in their visors. Beverage of some kind. I'm flexible on beverages, really. A laser gun shot took him in the shoulder. The fabric burned. The flesh underneath blackened. Deadpool glanced down at it, then back up at the shooter. Okay, rude. Also, ow. Also. He paused, watching the wound. The charred flesh began to bubble, new tissue growing with visible speed, pushing out the damaged skin like time-lapse footage of a flower blooming. Also, that's new. My healing factor usually doesn't have quite that much pizzazz. Must be something in the water. Do you guys even have water, or do you just drink liquid depression straight from the tap? The guards had stopped advancing. They stood frozen, weapons half raised, staring at flesh that shouldn't regenerate, at a wound that shouldn't heal, at a man who shouldn't exist. Halbrecht felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine confusion. Not uncertainty about the enemy's capabilities, that was tactical assessment. Not surprise at an unexpected development. That was simply inadequate intelligence gathering. This was deeper. This was the feeling of reality operating by rules he didn't recognize. Mutant, he declared. But even as he said it, he knew it was insufficient. Psyker, demon, some new breed of nope, and ooh, that's an interesting option we'll table for later. Deadpool interrupted, holstering his weapons and raising his hands in mock surrender. Look, I get it. Strange guy appears in your murder palace, starts making fun of the decor, won't die properly. This is clearly a situation requiring some good old-fashioned authoritarian overreaction. But before you do the whole torture the prisoner thing, and I can tell you're thinking about it, you've got that look. Like someone who really enjoys filling out the torture requisition forms in triplicate. Maybe we could just skip to the part where you realize I'm more useful as a weird asset than as a weird stain on your creepy floor. Halbrecht's finger tightened on the trigger. Every instinct screamed to eliminate this anomaly. But Inquisitors didn't survive by following instinct alone. They survived by being thorough. Take him to Cell Omega, Halbrecht commanded. Maximum restraints. I want gene scans, blood samples, and a full psychic probe. And bring me Interrogator Voss. If this thing can regenerate, I want to know how many times before it stops. As the guards swarmed him, Deadpool didn't resist, just kept up a running commentary about their very aggressive customer service. Halbrecht activated his Voxcaster. This is Inquisitor Halbrecht. Clearance Crimson Absolute. I have an unidentified Xeno-adjacent entity in custody. It demonstrates rapid regeneration, advanced weaponry, and... He paused, searching for the right words. Behavioral patterns inconsistent with any known threat classification. The response crackled back. The Emperor protects Inquisitor. Proceed with standard protocol. Standard protocol. Halbrecht had followed standard protocol for 70 years. Standard protocol had never failed him. He watched as they dragged the still-talking prisoner toward the detention levels and felt the first whisper of doubt that maybe, just maybe, there was no standard protocol for this. Cell Omega was designed for things that shouldn't exist. 3-foot-thick walls inscribed with prayers of binding, psychic dampeners humming at frequencies that made baseline humans nauseous, restraint systems that could hold a gene-enhanced warrior or a minor demon. The Inquisition had built it after a rogue psyker had liquefied himself and escaped through the ventilation system, and Halbrecht had personally overseen 17 enhancements since then. Deadpool sat in the restraint chair, arms and legs locked in adamantium shackles, looking around with the fascination of a tourist visiting a particularly edgy museum. "So, this is cozy," he said to nobody in particular. "Very torture dungeon chic. I'm getting strong." We read one book about medieval punishment devices and made it our entire personality vibes. The ambient screaming from other cells is a nice touch, though. Really sells the atmosphere. Interrogator Voss entered, flanked by 2 guards and a servo skull that bobbed at shoulder height, recording. Voss was thin, pale, and had the look of someone who considered sleep a waste of time that could be spent contemplating suffering. He carried a data slate in one hand and a neural probe in the other. "Subject is restrained," Voss noted into the servo skull's Vox recorder. "Beginning preliminary assessment. Subject displays signs of..." "Is that laughter?" "Oh, I'm sorry," Deadpool said, straightening up as much as the restraints allowed. "It's just... neural probe?" "Buddy, I've had brain surgery performed by a veterinarian while I was conscious. I've had my skull used as a serving bowl by a demon. I once let my therapist, long story, she was very unethical, literally dig around in my gray matter looking for my issues. Spoiler alert, she found too many and quit. Started selling essential oils instead. So when you come at me with what looks like a fancy meat thermometer, forgive me if I'm not exactly trembling." Voss's expression didn't change. He'd interrogated heretics who spat defiance, cultists who laughed at pain, even a demon who'd sung opera while being exorcised. The technique was always the same. Establish dominance, break resistance, extract information. He activated the neural probe. It hummed to life, crackling with psychic energy amplified through ancient technology. He pressed it against Deadpool's temple. Nothing happened. Voss frowned, adjusted the settings, tried again. The probe's energy discharged against Deadpool's skull like water hitting oil. Present, but unable to penetrate. "Huh," Deadpool said. "Usually there's more sizzling. Are you sure you plugged it in? Did you check the batteries? Maybe blow on it? That always worked for my Nintendo." "Psychic resistance," Voss muttered, making notes. "Possible null field generation or..." "No. Readings show active psychic presence in the room. The subject's mind is simply..." He paused, studying his data slate with growing confusion. "Unreadable. Not blank, not shielded. It's as if the subject's consciousness exists in multiple contradictory states simultaneously." "Oh, that's just my sparkling personality," Deadpool said cheerfully. "Also brain cancer. Also super cancer that fights the regular cancer. Also experimental treatment that gave me regeneration, but made my brain look like scrambled eggs that got in a fight with a blender. It's a whole thing. Very tragic. I'd cry about it, but my tear ducts are basically tumors at this point." Voss set down the probe and picked up a more traditional tool, a monomolecular scalpel. If psychic interrogation proves ineffective, we proceed to physical assessment. The Inquisitor wants to understand your regenerative capabilities. "Oh, the stabbing portion of the evening." Deadpool's voice somehow conveyed a smile behind the mask. "Okay, ground rules. 1. I will be providing commentary throughout, because silence makes me uncomfortable. 2. On a scale of 1 to 10, How attached are you to not having nightmares about what's going to happen to this very sharp knife? Voss made the first incision across Deadpool's forearm, a precise cut 3 inches long, deep enough to expose muscle. Blood welled up, the red somehow brighter than the dark crimson that usually filled the Inquisition's torture chambers. And then it stopped. The wound began closing, not slowly, not gradually, but with visible, impossible speed. Flesh crawled over flesh, muscle fibers knitted together like time-lapse footage. Within 30 seconds, only a thin pink line remained. Within a minute, even that was gone. "See, here's the thing about my healing factor," Deadpool said conversationally. "It's very enthusiastic, like overly enthusiastic. It's that friend who insists on helping you move even though they're terrible at it and keep dropping your stuff. Except instead of dropping your couch, it's growing back fingers you didn't ask for. I once regenerated a thumb on my elbow. Had to pay a guy to cut it off. He charged extra because I kept making thumb war jokes." Voss made another cut, then another. Each one healed within moments. He moved to more severe tests. Removing a finger, it grew back in 2 minutes. Burning patches of skin with a last pistol on low setting, new skin bloomed like pink flowers. Even injecting a cocktail of toxins that would kill an unaugmented human in seconds. Deadpool burped and said it tasted like expired Mountain Dew. Subject demonstrates regeneration beyond any recorded mutant or Xeno's capability, Voss reported to the servo skull. Speculation. Possible warp taint, but no overt corruption visible. Continued testing required to establish... Limits? Deadpool interrupted. "Buddy, I've been beheaded. Blown up. Dissolved in acid. Cut in half lengthwise. That was a weird Tuesday. One time I got atomized and came back because Marvel's editorial team needed me for a crossover event. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, if you're looking for my off switch, you're gonna need to try harder than Arts and Crafts Hour with Mr. Stabby." The door hissed open. Inquisitor Halbrecht entered, his presence filling the small cell with authority that had been forged over decades of absolute power. "Report," he commanded. "The subject is..." Voss hesitated, an emotion Halbrecht rarely saw on his interrogator's face. Uncertainty. "Unprecedented, Inquisitor. Psychic probing fails. Physical damage regenerates within moments. Toxins are metabolized almost instantly. And the subject's behavior suggests either advanced psychological conditioning against torture or genuine imperviousness to pain. Little of column A, little of column B," Deadpool added. "Also, hi. You must be the big boss. Love what you've done with your face. Very, I've seen too much meets I need a vacation, but will never take one. Can we talk about your employee wellness program? Because Voss here seems like he could really use a spa day." Halbrecht studied the prisoner with the cold assessment that had served him through countless interrogations. He'd broken cultists who worshipped dark gods. He'd extracted confessions from gene stealers wearing human skin. He'd once made a demon prince reveal its true name through nothing but patience and pain. But this was different. The prisoner wasn't resisting interrogation. He was treating it like a performance. Every torture technique became an opportunity for commentary. Every threat was met with jokes that made no sense, but somehow undermined the entire atmosphere of dominance the Inquisition relied upon. "What are you?" Halbrecht demanded. Deadpool tilted his head. "Now that's a philosophical question. Am I my body? Can't be. I've replaced it piece by piece like a ship of Theseus made of scar tissue. Am I my mind? Debatable. I hear voices, break the fourth wall, and occasionally have conversations with little yellow boxes that may or may not be real. Am I my soul? Do I even have one? The last priest I asked screamed and jumped out a window, so unclear. You speak in riddles? No. I speak in pop culture references you don't get because your universe is stuck in permanent Grimdark mode and forgot to include comic relief in the source code. Deadpool leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. But since we're having a moment of honesty, and I can tell we are, you've got that look like you're about to monologue about duty and sacrifice. Here's the truth. I'm a mutant mercenary from another dimension who got yeeted into your fascist nightmare of a galaxy by what I can only describe as a cosmic wedgie. I have no idea how I got here, no idea how to get home, and frankly, I'm starting to think this might be hell. Except hell probably has better interior lighting. Halbrecht processed this. Mutant, probable. Another dimension, impossible. Yet the prisoner's equipment and biological signatures matched no known Xeno species. The weaponry alone suggested technology that made even the Tau look primitive. You are a threat, Halbrecht concluded, to the Imperium, to order itself. Your very existence violates the natural law. Guilty as charged, Deadpool said brightly. But here's my counteroffer. Instead of doing the whole burn the heretic thing, which, by the way, super on brand for you guys, why not use me? I'm unkillable, I'm a fantastic fighter, and I work for relatively reasonable rates. Need someone assassinated? I'm your guy. Need someone to infiltrate somewhere horrible? Already living my worst life? Might as well monetize it. Need someone to... Okay, you're making the I'm going to execute you face again. That's fair. It was worth a shot. Halbrecht turned to Voss. Prepare the pyre. We will see if this thing can regenerate from ash. Finally, Deadpool exclaimed. The fire test. I was wondering when we'd get there. For the record, I have survived immolation before, but it really hurts, and I'll probably say some things I don't mean. Also, question, do you guys do this a lot? Just burn people? Because that seems like a waste of perfectly good biomass. Have you considered composting? As the guards began unlocking the restraints to transfer him to the execution chamber, Deadpool's voice took on a different tone. Still casual, still joking, but with an edge underneath. You know what the funny thing is? In my universe, I'm considered a hero-ish, on good days. But here I'm already on the pyre before I've even done anything wrong. That's the thing about fascist theocracies. They don't wait to see if you're actually a threat. They just assume everyone's guilty and work backwards from there. Halbrecht didn't respond. He'd heard defiance before. This prisoner would burn. They always burned. What the Inquisitor didn't see, what couldn't see, was the slight smile behind Deadpool's mask. Because Deadpool had already counted the guards, memorized the cell layout, and spotted 3 different escape routes. He was just waiting for the right punchline. The execution courtyard was open to Carcinus Prime's acid rain, a deliberate choice. Halbrecht believed that heretics should feel the Emperor's judgment through every sense. The bite of restraints, the heat of flames, and the sting of caustic precipitation eating at exposed skin. A crowd had gathered. Off-duty inquisitorial staff, penal legionnaires awaiting their own sentences, and a delegation of ministorum priests who had arrived to witness what Halbrecht had described as an unprecedented xeno-heretic abomination. Deadpool stood chained to a reinforced stake, surrounded by promethium-soaked kindling. He'd counted 47 armed guards, 12 servo skulls recording from various angles, and one very enthusiastic priest who kept chanting about purification through fire. So, question. Deadpool called out over the chanting. Is this a regular thing, or am I like special? Because if you do this every day, that's a lot of firewood. Seems environmentally irresponsible. Have you guys considered carbon offsets? Halbrecht stood on a raised platform, silhouetted against the gray sky. You are an anomaly, he announced, his voice amplified by voxcasters. An affront to the natural order. The Emperor's light cannot suffer such abominations to exist. You will burn, and in burning, you will be cleansed. If your regeneration allows you to survive, we will burn you again. And again, until nothing remains but ash and the memory of your heresy. Wow, that's dark. Like really dark. And coming from me, guy who once killed a man with his own large intestine, that's saying something. Deadpool tested the chains. Adamantium, properly forged. He could probably dislocate both shoulders and slip free. But that would take time. And these people seemed very excited about their fire. The priest with the igniter stepped forward, reciting prayers that droned on about purity and flame. Deadpool watched him approach, watched the promethium-soaked wood, and made a calculation. Okay, real talk before you turn me into a chimarito, Deadpool said, his voice cutting through the ritual chanting. I've been burned before, like a lot, and each time I heal. But here's the thing about fire. It really hurts, like every nerve ending screaming at once. So when I inevitably survive this and regenerate, I'm going to be really, really cranky. And when Deadpool gets cranky, people lose limbs. Sometimes their own, sometimes others. It's a whole thing. Halbrecht made a gesture. The priest triggered the igniter. Flames erupted with a roar that swallowed all sound. Promethium burned at temperatures that could melt steel. The kindling exploded into an inferno that turned the courtyard into a vision of hell itself. The crowd stepped back from the heat. For 30 seconds, there was only fire. Then the screaming started. Not the screaming of someone dying, the screaming of someone who was experiencing every nerve ending being consumed and immediately regenerated. A cycle of death and rebirth happening faster than the brain could process. The sound was raw, primal, and deeply unsettling to everyone who heard it. The priests looked at each other nervously. The guards shifted their grips on their laser guns. Even Halbrecht felt something twist in his stomach. The flames burned for 5 minutes, then 10. At 15 minutes, Halbrecht ordered the fire suppressant deployed. Foam smothered the blaze, steam rising in great hissing clouds. When it cleared, Deadpool still stood chained to the stake. His suit was gone, burned away to reveal skin that was a patchwork of fresh pink tissue, blackened char, and areas actively regenerating. His mask had melted into his face, then been pushed off by new skin growing underneath. His eyes, visible now, somehow both alive and dead, fixed on Halbrecht with an expression that was no longer joking. So, Deadpool rasped, his throat still regenerating from inhaling superheated air. We've established I can survive being barbecued. Great experiment, very scientific. Now, here's what happens next. He flexed. The chains groaned. His muscles, freshly regenerated and somehow enhanced by whatever warp-touched reality this universe operated under, strained against the restraints. In my universe, Deadpool continued, his voice getting stronger as his vocal cords fully repaired. I'm classified as what we call unkillable, not immortal. Big difference. Immortal means you don't age. Unkillable means people keep trying, and I keep disappointing them. And you know what the funny thing about being unkillable is? The chains snapped. It makes you really good at escaping. Deadpool moved before the guards could raise their weapons. His body was still healing, patches of raw muscle visible beneath growing skin. But that didn't slow him down. He rolled forward, grabbed a fallen piece of chain, and whipped it across the nearest guard's throat with surgical precision. The man went down choking. Laser gun fire erupted from every direction. Deadpool twisted, dove, and moved with the practiced grace of someone who'd learned to fight while actively dying. Shots caught him, shoulder, thigh, abdomen. And he kept moving, his healing factor closing wounds almost as fast as they opened. He reached the first guard with a loaded weapon, grabbed the man's laser gun, and immediately fired it point blank into another guard's face. "Sorry," he shouted over the chaos. "Nothing personal. Blame your boss and his pyromania." A servo skull dive-bombed him. Deadpool snatched it out of the air, ripped out its recording core, and threw the rest at a priest who'd been reaching for an alarm. The impact sent the priest sprawling. "Contain him!" Halbrecht roared, drawing his bolt pistol. Deadpool was already moving, using the panicking crowd as cover, grabbing weapons from fallen guards, and generally creating the kind of beautiful chaos that only someone with nothing to lose could orchestrate. He dove behind a supply crate as bolt rounds exploded where his head had been seconds before. "You know," Deadpool called out, checking the ammunition in his newly acquired laser gun. "In retrospect, burning me was a terrible idea. Now I'm naked, angry, and I've got your guns. This is like that nightmare you had in Inquisitor school, except real and with more wisecracking." He popped up, fired 3 shots that took down 2 guards and destroyed a Voxcaster, then dropped back into cover as return fire shredded the crate. His skin was almost fully regenerated now, pink and fresh like a newborn's, which was both practical and deeply disturbing to look at. A thunder of boots announced reinforcements, 20 more guards in full combat gear moving in formation. Deadpool assessed his situation. Surrounded, outgunned, mostly healed, but exhausted, and still very much naked, except for the scraps of his burned suit clinging to his body. "Okay, new plan," he muttered to himself. Then, louder, "Everybody stop!" To his surprise, they did. Not because they wanted to, but because the sheer audacity of a naked, regenerating madman screaming commands in the middle of a firefight was so unexpected that human brains needed a moment to process it. Deadpool stood up, hands raised, laser gun pointed at the sky. "Hear me out. I know we've had our differences. You tried to torture me, I made fun of your decor. You set me on fire. I broke free and killed some of your guys. But what if we just took a beat? What if we considered that maybe, just maybe, I'm not actually your enemy here?" Halbrecht's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. "You are heresy made flesh. See, you keep saying that, but you haven't actually asked me what I want." Deadpool's voice carried a manic energy. "Maybe I want to help. Maybe I'm a good guy stuck in a bad situation. Maybe I..." A bolt round punched through his chest, exploding his heart. Deadpool looked down at the fist-sized hole in his torso, then back up at Halbrecht, who stood with his bolt pistol still smoking. "Okay," Deadpool wheezed, blood bubbling from his lips. "That was actually pretty badass." He collapsed. The guards approached cautiously, weapons trained. One prodded him with a boot. No response. The hole in his chest was catastrophic, organs visible, blood pooling beneath him. The kind of wound that nothing survived. "Prepare cremation protocol," Halbrecht ordered. "This time we reduce him to atoms." The guard prodding Deadpool didn't see the hand move. None of them did. Deadpool's fingers closed around the guard's ankle. and in one smooth motion that defied the fact his heart was still regrowing. He yanked the man off balance, caught his falling laser gun, and fired upward into the crowd. "Surprise!" Deadpool shouted, his voice wet with blood but delighted with chaos. "The playing dead trick works every time. Well, not every time. Sometimes I'm actually dead. It's a 50-50 thing." The courtyard erupted into chaos again. Deadpool sprinted, still healing, his heart now beating in an incomplete ribcage, toward the perimeter wall. He knew he couldn't fight them all. Knew he was operating on borrowed time before exhaustion or sheer firepower overwhelmed even his healing factor. But he'd learned something important. These people had rules, protocols. They expected enemies to act in predictable ways. Heretics screamed about chaos gods. Xenos fought with alien weapons. Mutants tried to hide their corruption. Nobody expected a naked regenerating madman to crack jokes while escaping execution. Deadpool hit the wall at a run, found handholds in the decorative skull carvings, because of course they decorated with skulls, and began climbing. Laser gun fire chipped at the stone around him. A bolt round took off 3 of his fingers. They'd grow back. At the top of the wall, he paused, looked back at the assembled inquisitorial forces, and gave a jaunty wave with his regenerating hand. "This has been fun. Let's do it again sometime. Maybe next time with less fire and more reasonable conversation. Also, someone should really look into therapy. All of you, seriously. The amount of repression in this organization could power a small star." Then he jumped backward off the wall, into the acid rain and the sprawling hive city beyond. Halbrecht watched him disappear, his bolt pistol still raised, his mind already calculating pursuit vectors. But something nagged at him. A question that had no good answer. What did you do with a threat that couldn't be killed, couldn't be broken, and seemed to treat your entire civilization like an elaborate joke? In the distance, Deadpool's voice echoed back, already fading into the hive's industrial cacophony. "I'll be back, and I'm bringing tacos." Halbrecht lowered his weapon and activated his Vox. "All units. Priority Alpha Crimson. There is a xeno-heretic loose in the hive. Extreme regenerative capability. Psychological warfare specialist. Assume maximum threat level." He didn't mention the jokes. How could he explain that the most disturbing part wasn't the healing, or the escape, or even the naked climbing? It was the laughter. The underhive of Carcinus Prime was a vertical abyss of industrial decay. 12 miles of collapsed manufactorums, rusted hab blocks, and forgotten passages where gangers, mutants, and things without names carved out desperate existences. The acid rain didn't reach this deep, but other things did. Toxic runoff, radiation leaks, and the constant drip of despair from the hive levels above. Deadpool had stolen clothes from a corpse. Some unlucky worker who died from what looked like aggressive poverty, and now wore a ragged coat that smelled like machine oil and regret. His skin had fully regenerated, though the process had left him exhausted in ways his healing factor usually prevented. Something about this universe made regeneration cost more. The wounds closed, but the energy debt lingered. He'd found shelter in what had once been a water reclamation facility, now home to a gang of underhive scavengers called the Rust Eaters. They'd surrounded him within minutes of his arrival. 12 malnourished humans with improvised weapons, all staring at his fresh, unscarred skin like it was made of precious metal. "You're not from around here," their leader said. She was maybe 25, but looked 50. Her face a roadmap of scars and chemical burns. She held a crude pistol that was more rust than gun. But at this range, it didn't matter. "What gave it away?" Deadpool asked. sitting cross-legged on the floor with his hands visible. The fact I have all my teeth? The distinct lack of radiation sores? My sparkling personality? "You talk funny," one of the gangers muttered. Like you're making fun of something we can't see. "Kid, you're more perceptive than the Inquisition. They just tried to burn me for existing." Deadpool studied them, saw the hunger, the desperation, the way they held weapons like lifelines, because in this place, they probably were. "Look, I'm just passing through. Need to find some actual clothes, maybe some weapons that weren't built in someone's garage, and figure out what fresh hell I've landed in." The leader, she'd introduced herself as Kessa, tilted her head. "You ran from the Inquisition. More like forcefully left custody while on fire. And they're looking for you?" "Oh, aggressively. Like deploy the murder nuns level of looking." Kessa laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Then you're already dead. Nobody escapes the Inquisition. They have servo skulls, auspex arrays, informants in every level. They'll find you, drag you back up Hive, and make an example that lasts days." She paused. "Unless you can make it worth our while to hide you." Deadpool felt the negotiation shift. This was familiar territory. Mercenary economics, the universal language of, "What can you do for me?" He'd navigated similar conversations in his own universe, though usually with fewer mutated appendages visible in his peripheral vision. "What do you need?" he asked. "Food, medicine, weapons that actually work." Kessa gestured at the facility around them. "We're dying down here, slowly. The guild gangs control the water recyclers. The corpse takers control the fungus farms. And we have this building and nothing else. So, unless you've got a solution to that, you're just another mouth we can't feed." Deadpool stood, brushing off his stolen coat. "Okay, counterpoint. What if I'm the most dangerous thing you've ever hidden? What if the Inquisition comes down here looking for me, and instead of finding a scared refugee, they find someone who's already made friends with the local murder hobos? That's leverage. That's a negotiating position you didn't have 5 minutes ago. That's also a death sentence. Only if they catch me." Deadpool's voice shifted, became more serious. "Look, in my universe, I'm what we call a mercenary. I kill people for money, sometimes for free if they really deserve it. I'm good at it. Really good. So here's my offer. I help you take what you need from whoever has it, and you teach me how this nightmare dimension works. Deal?" Kessa studied him with eyes that had learned to spot lies the way most people learn to breathe. "You're either crazy or stupid." "Why not both? I contain multitudes, also brain cancer. Did I mention the brain cancer?" One of the gangers, younger, maybe 15, spoke up. "The corpse takers have a weapon cache. Old stuff from before the Hive settled. They guard it like it's their souls." He looked at Kessa nervously. "If we had even half those guns, we'd be dead within a week," Kessa finished. "The corpse takers would hunt us to extinction. They don't forgive theft." "See, this is where I come in," Deadpool said cheerfully. "You're thinking like people who have to live with consequences. I'm thinking like someone who can regenerate from being exploded. Totally different risk assessment. Point me at these corpse takers and I'll get you guns. You get me information about this universe, why everyone's so obsessed with skulls. What's the deal with the evil space church? And most importantly, how do I get tacos in this place?" "Tacos?" Kessa repeated, confused. "Never mind. Clearly this universe is more broken than I thought." The planning took 20 minutes. The corpse takers operated out of a converted corpse starch processing facility, which was exactly as horrible as it sounded, and guarded their weapon cache with about 30 gangers. They had actual laser guns, not improvised scrap. They had body armor. They had discipline. They did not have Deadpool. The raid happened at shift change, when guards were tired and replacements hadn't yet caffeinated themselves with whatever passed for stimulants in the underhive. Deadpool approached the main entrance alone, hands raised, wearing his best, harmless idiot expression. "Hi, I'm lost. Could you direct me to the nearest Starbucks?" The guard stared at him, then raised his laser gun. "Identification, now." "Oh, sure, let me just..." Deadpool patted his pockets. Must have left it in my other pants. You know how it is. Actually, wait, do you know how it is? Do you guys have pants? Or is it all just tactical loincloths down here? The second guard stepped forward, suspicious. "You're not from any local gang?" "Nope, I'm new in town. Just arrived via dimensional rift. Long story. Involves fire and torture. And more fire. It was a whole thing." Deadpool's hand moved faster than the guards could track, grabbing the first guard's laser gun and driving it upward into his chin. The crack of bone echoed in the corridor. The second guard fired. The shot took Deadpool in the stomach, burning through stolen clothes and flesh. Deadpool grunted, grabbed the guard's weapon, redirected it into his comrade's chest, then headbutted the guard hard enough to break his nose. "Sorry, guys," Deadpool said, clutching his healing stomach, "but you're standing between me and gainful employment. Nothing personal?" The alarm klaxon wailed. Deadpool grabbed both laser guns and sprinted deeper into the facility. Behind him, Kessa and her rust eaters poured through the entrance, moving with the desperate speed of people who knew this was their only chance. The corpse takers responded with the efficiency of a gang that had held territory through violence. They poured from side passages, laser guns barking, covering fire overlapping in ways that spoke to actual training. Someone here had military experience. Deadpool dove behind a support pillar as last fire chewed through the air where his head had been. He popped out, fired 3 shots, and was rewarded with 2 screams and a wet thud. "You know," he called out, "in my universe, we have these things called discussion and compromise. Maybe we could try that." A grenade bounced into his cover. Deadpool looked at it, looked at the corridor, and made a calculation. He grabbed the grenade, stood up, and threw it back in one smooth motion. The explosion caught 3 corpse takers, sending them flying. "Or we could keep doing the exploding thing. That works too." The fight devolved into the kind of close-quarters chaos that Deadpool thrived in. He moved through corridors slick with industrial runoff, trading shots with gangers who'd probably never faced someone who could heal from laser gun wounds in real time. He took hits, shoulder, leg, a grazing shot across his ribs, and kept moving, his regeneration pushing his body beyond normal limits. But even healing had costs. Each wound regenerated, left him more exhausted. His muscles burned, his vision swam. Whatever was different about this universe, it made staying alive harder. He found the weapon cache in a reinforced room, guarded by the gang's leader, a massive man covered in ritual scars that spelled words in Low Gothic. Words like pain and flesh and eternity. "You're the new blood," the man said, raising a combat shotgun. "The Inquisition's prey. Word travels fast in Murder Town." Deadpool replied, checking his laser gun's charge. Nearly empty. "Let me guess. You're going to try to collect the bounty?" "There is no bounty. There is only the hunt. The corpse takers serve the gods of hunger and despair. And you..." The man smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. "You smell like fresh meat." "Okay, first, rude. Second, gods of hunger and despair. Are you guys working for chaos? Because I've heard about chaos. The tortured church people mentioned it during the fire-related activities. And I gotta say, if you're going to sell your soul to eldritch horrors, at least get dental included in the contract. The gang leader charged. Deadpool fired his last shots, hitting center mass, but the man kept coming like the wounds were irrelevant. Chaos corruption, it had to be. The same kind of twisted resilience that made demons dangerous. They collided in a tangle of limbs and violence. The shotgun went off, taking a chunk out of Deadpool's shoulder. Deadpool's fist found the man's throat, crushed it. But the gang leader just laughed through his ruined windpipe and head-butted Deadpool hard enough to crack his skull. Deadpool's vision went white. He felt his skull already knitting back together, but the pain was overwhelming. He grabbed the only weapon in reach, a jagged piece of scrap metal from the floor, and drove it up under the gang leader's ribcage, searching for the heart. The man's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth. Whatever chaos gifts he had, they couldn't overcome basic biology. He fell, twitching, as unnatural vitality drained from his body. Deadpool stood, swaying, his skull still regenerating. "Note to self," he muttered. "This universe has magic evil. That's new information. Bad information, but new." Kessa and her gang reached the cache, staring at the racks of laser guns, ammunition, and even a few stub pistols. Wealth beyond imagination for Underhive gangers. "Take what you can carry," Deadpool said, leaning against the wall. "And someone tell me everything about these gods your friend was serving. Because if there's evil magic in this universe, I need to know if I can punch it." Kessa grabbed a laser gun, checked its charge with practiced efficiency, then looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You're insane, but you kept your word. Part of my charm, that and the inability to die properly." Deadpool's skull finished healing with an unpleasant crackling sound. "So, about that information exchange." As they loaded up weapons and prepared to escape before inquisitorial reinforcements arrived, Kessa began explaining the basics. The Emperor, the Warp, demons, chaos gods, the endless war against everything. Deadpool listened, his expression invisible behind his regenerated mask. He'd found a scrap of red cloth and fashioned something approximating his costume. And as he listened, he began to understand something terrible. This wasn't just a dark universe. This was a universe that ran on darkness, that required faith and fanaticism to survive, where hope was a luxury and laughter was heresy. He'd spent years in his own universe, fighting to maintain his sense of humor against despair. Now he was in a place where despair was hard-coded into reality itself. "Well," he said finally, "this is going to suck." The safe house was a HAB unit abandoned after an atmospheric processor malfunction had killed its previous occupants. The bodies were still there, 3 generations of a family, mummified by toxic gas, arranged around a dinner table in a tableau of mid-hive domesticity, frozen in death. Kessa's gang had shoved them in a corner and tried not to look at them. Deadpool sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his newly acquired arsenal, field-stripping a laser gun with the ease of someone who'd handled thousands of weapons across dozens of conflicts. Around him, the Rust Eaters celebrated their haul with the kind of desperate joy that people who lived on borrowed time specialized in. "So, let me see if I've got this straight," Deadpool said, not looking up from his work. "There's an emperor who's been dead but not dead for 10,000 years. Sitting on a golden toilet that keeps him barely alive. He requires the sacrifice of 1,000 psychics daily just to maintain his night light. and everyone worships him like he's the best thing since sliced bread, even though objectively, this is the worst-run civilization I've ever seen, and I've been to Detroit. Kessa, cleaning her own weapon nearby, nodded. The Emperor protects. Does he, though? Because from where I'm sitting, which is in a room with corpses we're too tired to move, it seems like the Emperor mostly just exists in perpetual agony, while his Imperium does whatever it wants in his name. Deadpool looked up, his mask's white eyes somehow conveying confusion. That's not protection. That's a hostage situation with extra steps. That's heresy, one of the younger gangers said nervously. Kid, I've been sentenced to death twice since I got here. We're already past heresy and into, what are they gonna do, kill me harder? Territory. Deadpool reassembled the laser gun with a satisfying click. But fine, let's table the theological debate. What about these chaos gods? The angry ones who apparently wanted to eat me via that charming gentleman with the filed teeth. Kessa's expression darkened. The ruinous powers, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slaanesh. They're the reason the Imperium is so paranoid. They corrupt from within. They promise power, pleasure, knowledge, strength, and they deliver. But the cost is your soul, your humanity, everything. The corpse takers served Nurgle. Death and decay made manifest. So let me get this absolutely crystal clear, Deadpool said slowly. This universe has actual evil gods who can possess people, and the only thing standing between humanity and total demonic conquest is the fascist space church that tried to barbecue me? Yes. That's... Deadpool paused. That's actually a decent justification for fascism. I mean, it's still fascism, which is bad. But if the alternative is literal demons eating souls, suddenly the whole burn first, ask questions never policy makes a twisted kind of sense. He stood pacing. I hate that. I hate that I understand their logic. It's like finding out the worst person you know made a good point. A vox crackle interrupted them. One of the gangers monitoring a stolen Auspex unit waved frantically. Inquisitorial forces. 3 levels up and descending. They're doing a sweep pattern. Servo skulls everywhere. They're looking for you, Kessa said, already moving to pack up. We need to relocate. Or, Deadpool said, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. We give them what they're looking for, just not the way they expect. That's suicide. No, suicide is standing still and hoping they don't find us. I'm talking about controlled chaos, misdirection, the ancient art of look over there while I stab you over here. Deadpool grabbed his newly acquired weapons. 2 laser guns, a bandolier of grenades, and a wicked-looking combat knife. These Inquisition guys, they're used to hunting scared heretics, right? People who run and hide. Everyone runs from the Inquisition. Well, I'm not everyone. I'm the guy who breaks patterns. Deadpool checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. Here's the plan. I'm going to go up there and be really, really obvious. While they're focused on me, you and your people disappear into whatever bolt hole you've got prepared. They want the weird regenerating heretic? Fine. Let's give them a show. They'll capture you again. Probably. But here's the thing about me. I'm really hard to keep captured. It's like my superpower's superpower. Deadpool moved toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and Kessa? Thanks for the crash course in Grimdark 101. If I survive this, I'll bring you something nice. Maybe a corpse starch ration that doesn't taste like despair. They don't make those. I know. That's why it'll be so impressive when I find one. 3 levels up, Inquisitor Halbrecht stood in a junction corridor, studying a hololith display that showed the Underhive in wireframe green. Servo skulls bobbed around him, feeding data to his Auspex array. Behind him, 20 inquisitorial stormtroopers in carapace armor waited with hellguns at the ready. "The Xeno-heretic is in Sector 7 Gamma," Interrogator Voss reported, studying his data slate. Multiple witnesses report an outsider matching the description, aided by local gangers. He eliminated a corpse-taker stronghold single-handedly. "Chaos-tainted gangers," Halbrecht corrected. "The locals are irrelevant. Our target is the only priority." He activated his Vox. "All units converge on Sector 7 Gamma. Shoot to immobilize. I want him alive for proper study." That's when the singing started. It echoed through the Underhive corridors, amplified by Voxcasters that someone had clearly stolen and repurposed. The voice was enthusiastic, but off-key, singing words that made no sense to anyone who heard them. "I'm gonna be 500 miles," blared through the speakers, followed by Deadpool's voice in enthusiastic mimicry of a song that didn't exist in this universe. "And I would walk 500 miles, and I would walk 500 more." "What in the Emperor's name?" Voss muttered. "Just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door." Halbrecht's jaw tightened. "It's mocking us, luring us in. Or it's insane," Voss offered. "Perhaps both. Advance with caution." The stormtroopers moved in practiced formation, clearing corners, scanning with Auspex units. The singing continued, growing louder as they approached, now transitioning to something else. "Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Wait, that's not right. I'm getting my memes confused. Wrong song for this occasion. How about I Will Survive? Hey, hey!" They found him in an open plaza, a space where 3 corridors met, with clear sightlines in every direction. Deadpool stood in the center, unarmed, hands raised, swaying slightly to his own off-key singing. "Oh good, you found me," he called out cheerfully. I was starting to think my directions were unclear. "Turn left at the Nightmare, right at the Despair, continue straight through existential dread until you reach abject horror." "It's not the best landmark system." Halbrecht stepped forward, hellguns trained on the target from every angle. "You will surrender peacefully." "I mean, I'm literally standing here with my hands up. That's pretty peaceful. Unless you want me to lie down? Make a chalk outline of myself? I'm flexible. Literally, I can dislocate every joint if needed. It's gross, but effective." "Why did you lure us here?" "Because I wanted to have a conversation without the whole fire and torture ambiance. Really kills the mood." Deadpool lowered his hand slowly. "See, I've been thinking about our situation. You think I'm a threat. I think you're a fascist theocracy with a murder fetish. Both of us are probably right. But here's the thing. I've been learning about your universe. The demons, the evil gods. The fact that humanity is basically a candle flame in a cosmic hurricane of horror. Your point, heretic? My point is that maybe, and hear me out here, maybe you're spending so much time burning potential allies that you're making your own job harder. I'm unkillable. I'm a fantastic fighter. And I have exactly zero interest in chaos corruption because I've already got voices in my head and they're annoying enough without adding ancient evil gods to the mix." Halbrecht studied him. "You expect me to believe you want to serve the Imperium?" "Oh, hell no. Your Imperium is a nightmare and I want no part of it. But I also don't want demons eating my face, which seems to be the alternative. So I'm proposing a third option. You point me at things that need killing. I kill them in creative and disturbing ways. and we both pretend I'm not deeply heretical. Win-win. There is no compromise with heresy. See? That attitude is exactly why you guys have been fighting the same war for 10,000 years. Deadpool's voice shifted, became harder. You know what I did in my universe? I killed people that needed killing. Sometimes for money. Sometimes because they deserved it. And you know what? I was pretty good at keeping the really bad things from happening. Not because I followed orders or worshipped anyone. Because sometimes you need someone who's willing to get dirty and crack jokes while doing it. Voss spoke up. Inquisitor, perhaps we should consider... No. Albrecht's voice was final. This creature is an abomination. It mocks the natural order. It will be contained, studied, and, if necessary, destroyed utterly. There is no negotiation. Deadpool sighed. I figured you'd say that, which is why this wasn't actually a peace offering. It was a distraction. He moved, not backward or to the side, but up, jumping with enhanced strength, catching the edge of a support beam, swinging his body toward the ceiling. The stormtroopers fired, last beams cutting through the air where he'd been standing. Deadpool hit the ceiling running, somehow finding purchase on rusted pipes and cable conduits. You know what I've learned about this universe? He called down. Everything is held together with 10,000-year-old duct tape and prayer. Your infrastructure is a death trap. He grabbed a support cable and yanked. The ancient metal snapped with a groan. A section of the ceiling collapsed, raining debris on the stormtroopers below. Deadpool rode the falling metal down, firing weapons he'd hidden in the plaza beforehand. Laser guns stashed on support beams, grenades rigged to deadman switches. The plaza erupted into chaos. Albrecht dove for cover as explosions rocked the corridor. His stormtroopers scattered, trying to maintain formation while dodging falling debris. Servo skulls were swatted from the air by chunks of falling rockcrete. And through it all, Deadpool laughed. Not the nervous laughter of someone afraid, not the manic laughter of someone broken, but the genuine amusement of someone who'd found the perfect punchline in the middle of apocalyptic chaos. He landed in a crouch, grabbed a stormtrooper's hellgun mid-fall, and used it to vault over cover while simultaneously shooting another trooper in the leg. You want to know why I'm dangerous? He called out. It's not the healing factor. It's not the combat training. It's that I've got nothing to lose, and I think this whole situation is hilarious. Albrecht rose from cover, his bolt pistol tracking the target. But Deadpool was already gone, disappearing into a side corridor as more ceiling sections collapsed, sealing off pursuit. The Inquisitor stood in the settling dust, his pristine coat now gray with debris, his stormtroopers regrouping with 3 wounded and 2 dead. They'd been humiliated, outmaneuvered, made to look foolish by a single target who turned their own tactics against them. Seal all exits from the underhive, Albrecht commanded, his voice cold with fury. Deploy additional servo skull networks. Authorization code, Exterminatus Light. I want every gang leader, every informant, every wretched soul in the lower levels to know. Anyone who aids the heretic dies. Anyone who even knows his location and fails to report dies. Burn it all if you must, but find him. Voss hesitated. Inquisitor, that level of response for one target. This isn't about one target. Albrecht's eyes were hard as ceramite. This is about what he represents. Chaos works through corruption. Xenos work through invasion. But this thing works through mockery, through making us question, through suggesting there might be alternatives to the Emperor's light. That kind of heresy is more dangerous than any demon, because it spreads through ideas. He activated his Vox link to Inquisitorial Command. "This is Halbrecht. I'm classifying the target as Apex-level threat, requesting immediate support from whatever assets are available. If we let this creature spread its infection of irreverence, it could undermine the very foundations of our faith." 3 levels down, Deadpool collapsed in a new hiding spot, breathing hard, his body healing from a dozen minor wounds. He'd bought Kessa and her people time to vanish. He'd proven he could outthink the Inquisition's standard tactics. But he'd also learned something terrifying. They weren't going to stop, ever. Because he wasn't just a physical threat, he was a narrative threat. And in a universe held together by belief, faith, and absolute certainty, someone who questioned everything was more dangerous than any weapon. "Well," he muttered to the darkness, "this is going exactly as badly as I expected." The servo skull hovered inches from Deadpool's face, its mechanical eye whirring as it focused. He'd caught it mid-patrol, crushed its Vox transmitter before it could send an alert, and now held it like a reluctant pet. The skull's previous owner had been someone important. Gold filigree decorated the bone, and a small purity seal dangled from its lower jaw. "So, here's my question," Deadpool said to the skull, sitting in what had once been a water cistern. "Do you guys remember being people? Like, is there some residual consciousness in there going, 'Oh, Emperor, I'm a flying skull now. This is so embarrassing'? Or is it just pure servitor programming?" The skull's eye flickered. No response capability without its Vox unit. "Right, stupid question. You're basically a really morbid drone." He turned it over, examining the anti-grav suspensors. "But you know what's interesting? You're Imperial tech, and you work pretty well for 10,000-year-old hardware, which means someone, somewhere in this nightmare civilization, actually knows how to maintain things. That's hopeful, in a really depressing way." He'd been in the Underhive for 3 days now. The Inquisition had turned the lower levels into a war zone. Random patrols, civilian interrogations, and at least 2 incidents of accidental fires that had consumed entire hab blocks. The message was clear. Harbor the heretic, burn with him. Kessa had gone to ground with her gang, but she'd left him a dead drop with supplies and information. According to her notes, the Inquisition was bringing in reinforcements. Not just stormtroopers, but something worse. Sisters of battle. Deadpool had asked around about them. The responses ranged from holy warriors of the Emperor, to angels of death in power armor, to one particularly traumatized ganger who just started crying and wouldn't stop. "So, nuns with guns," Deadpool muttered, releasing the servo skull. It hovered uncertainly, its programming confused by the lack of orders. "In power armor, who probably won't appreciate my charm and wit. This is fine. Everything is fine." The skull bobbed slightly, as if agreeing. "Oh, now you're helpful." A sound echoed through the cistern. Boots on metal, multiple sets, moving with synchronized precision. Deadpool grabbed his weapons and moved to a vantage point. Through gaps in the cistern's architecture, he saw them. They were beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Power armor painted bone white and crimson, adorned with purity seals and devotional scripture. Bolters held with the ease of long-time practice. And their faces, what little showed through their helmets, held the absolute certainty of true believers. At their head walked a sister superior, her armor more ornate, her bearing radiating command authority. She carried a power sword that hummed with barely contained energy. "Sweep pattern Delta," she commanded, her voice amplified by her armor's Vox grill. "The heretic is within this sector. The Emperor guides our aim. We will not fail." "Great," Deadpool whispered. Murder nuns with religious conviction, my favorite. He could run, should run. But 3 days of hiding had taught him something uncomfortable. This universe didn't have corners he could disappear into. The Imperium owned everything, watched everything, and would eventually grind down any resistance through sheer persistent brutality. Running just meant dying tired. So instead, he did what he did best. He made an entrance. Deadpool dropped from his vantage point, landing in the center of the Sisters' formation with his laser guns raised. Good morning, ladies. Beautiful day for religious persecution, isn't it? I'm Deadpool, and I'll be your heretic for this evening. Please keep your arms and legs inside the power armor at all times. To their credit, the sisters didn't panic. They simply adjusted their aim with mechanical precision, creating a kill box that no normal human could escape. The Sister Superior stepped forward, her power sword igniting. You will surrender and face the Emperor's judgment. See, here's my problem with that. Deadpool kept his weapons pointed down. Non-threatening, but ready. Every time I surrender to you people, it ends with fire or torture by fire. So I'm developing what my therapist would call trust issues. If I had a therapist. And if she hadn't quit and started selling essential oils. Your mockery is heresy. Everything I do is heresy according to you guys. I could sneeze wrong and you'd classify it as heresy. I bet there's a whole manual. The Big Book of Heresy, Volume 47, Suspicious Sneezing. One of the sisters fired. The bolt round screamed past Deadpool's head, close enough that he felt the heat. A warning shot. Okay, that was rude. I was trying to have a conversation here. Deadpool's voice hardened. Look, I know you've got orders. Kill the heretic, purge the unclean, suffer not the witch to live, etc. But has anyone in your organization considered that maybe, just maybe, I'm not the enemy? You mock the Emperor. I mock everyone. It's not personal. I mocked people in my own universe, and they were objectively better than you guys at the whole civilization thing. Deadpool gestured wildly with his laser guns, which made several sisters tense. But you know what? I also saved lives, stopped bad things from happening, killed monsters that actually deserved it. And yeah, I did it while cracking jokes, because humor is how some of us cope with existential horror. The Sister Superior's expression didn't change. You are an abomination. Your healing is unnatural. Your weapons are xeno-touched. Your very existence questions the natural order. There is no redemption for you. Wow, you didn't even hesitate. That's some serious programming. Deadpool tilted his head. Tell me something. Do you ever question your orders? Ever wonder if maybe the Imperium's methodology is a bit excessive? Ever lie awake at night thinking, hey, maybe burning entire worlds because one person said the wrong prayer is a slight overreaction? Doubt is the first step to damnation. And certainty is the first step to fascism. But we don't talk about that, do we? Deadpool lowered his weapons slowly. I'm not going to fight you. Not because I can't. I absolutely can. And it'll be messy and several of you will die before you put me down. But because I'm tired of killing people who are just following orders, even if those orders are terrible. The Sister Superior raised her power sword. Then you will die with honor, if nothing else. Actually, third option. Deadpool smiled behind his mask. I'm going to leave, and you're going to let me. Because if you don't, I'm going to start asking questions, loud questions, in front of your troops. Questions like, why does the Emperor need 1,000 psychic sacrifices daily? And if he's so powerful, why has the Imperium been losing ground for 10 millennia? And doesn't this all seem like a really elaborate scam by people who want power? The temperature in the cistern seemed to drop. Every sister's finger moved to their trigger. "You dare," the Sister Superior began. "Oh, I super dare. Because here's what I figured out about your universe. It runs on faith. Absolute, unquestioning faith. And I'm a walking, talking question mark. I'm what happens when someone shows up who doesn't buy the propaganda. And that terrifies your Inquisition more than any demon, because ideas spread faster than corruption." He started walking backward, weapons still lowered, eyes on the sisters. "So here's the deal. You can shoot me. I'll regenerate, kill a few of you, escape, and we do this dance again tomorrow. Or you can report back that the heretic escaped, and we all live to fight another day. Your choice." The Sister Superior's sword hummed. Her finger tightened on her bolter's trigger. For a long moment, the cistern held its breath. Then she lowered her weapon. "Let him go." "Sister Superior," one of the younger sisters protested. "Let him go." The Sister Superior's voice was ice. "This creature wants us to make him a martyr, wants to spread his poison through combat. We will not give him that satisfaction. We hunt him properly, methodically, until there is nowhere left to run." Deadpool reached the cistern's exit. "That's actually way scarier than just shooting me. You know that, right? The Emperor protects heretic, but his protection is reserved for the faithful. You will find no sanctuary in this universe. Story of my life, lives, whatever." Deadpool paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, I think you're scary and effective, and would probably be really good at your jobs if your jobs weren't enforce religious tyranny. That's almost a compliment." He vanished into the darkness. The sisters held position for a full minute before the Sister Superior activated her Vox. Inquisitor Halbrecht. The target was located and observed. He exhibits advanced psychological warfare capabilities. Recommend we adjust tactics. This is not a standard heretic. This is something new. Halbrecht's response crackled back. Something new is exactly why we cannot allow it to exist. Continue the hunt. The Sister Superior deactivated her Vox and looked at her squad. What we witnessed stays between us. The creature's words were heresy, but effective heresy. We must be vigilant not just against external threats, but against doubt itself. Prayer and purity. That is our shield. But even as she said it, she noticed one of her younger sisters staring at the empty doorway with an expression that wasn't quite fear. It was curiosity. And in the Imperium of Man, curiosity was the first crack in faith's armor. The change in inquisitorial tactics was immediate and brutal. No more single squad patrols. Now they moved in company strength, supported by armored sentinels whose heavy footfalls shook the very foundations of the Underhive. They weren't just hunting Deadpool. They were methodically erasing the environment that could hide him. Entire sectors were declared perdicia, lost, and systematically purged with flame and shell. The message was clear. The Inquisition would burn the hive to cinders to get to him. Deadpool watched from a precarious perch high in a derelict smelting tower as a hab block 3 levels below was engulfed in promethium fire. The screams were faint, distant, but they were there. He tried to warn some of the inhabitants, but fear of the Inquisition was greater than fear of fire. They'd stayed, and now they were dying. "Okay," he muttered to himself, the usual manic energy gone from his voice. "This is my fault. I made it personal. I poked the bear, and the bear decided to burn down the entire forest to get rid of the flea. That's a new level of overreaction, even for me." He'd become a plague. His presence was a contagion, and the Inquisition's cure was to amputate the infected limb, no matter how much healthy flesh went with it. Kessa's dead drop messages had stopped 2 days ago. He didn't know if she was dead, captured, or had simply cut her losses. He couldn't blame her. He was preparing to move again when the air in the smelting tower grew cold. The grime on the rusted floor began to frost over. A psychic pressure built in his skull, a sensation entirely different from the warp-induced nausea he'd felt near the Inquisition's null fields. This was anticipation. A figure shimmered into existence before him, coalescing from motes of impossible color and the scent of ozone and old parchment. It was tall, slender, and clad in ornate, Baroque armor that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at it. Its face was hidden behind an expressionless, bird-like helmet, but Deadpool felt its gaze like a physical weight. Wade Wilson. The voice was inside his head, smooth, multi-layered, and profoundly amused. Plus the variable, the question mark in a universe of exclamation points. Deadpool drew a last pistol, aiming it between the thing's eyes. Okay, spooky voice in my head guy. You're not the Inquisition. You're not the murder nuns. So what's your deal? Lost tourist? Interdimensional census taker? The creature let out a psychic chuckle. Plus I am a herald. A humble servant of the great conspirator, the changer of ways. My master finds you. Fascinating. Tzeentch, Deadpool said, the name feeling alien and heavy on his tongue. The chaos god of elaborate plans and probably really confusing board games. Kessa mentioned you, said you were a real piece of work. Potts the mortal mind simplifies what it cannot comprehend. But you are different. You are a narrative paradox. Your very existence here is a plot hole. And plot holes, plus, the herald leaned forward, its helmet almost touching Deadpool's mask. Plus, can be exploited. Exploited how? You want me to join your book club? Because I'm more of a pictures with captions guy. So you seek to destroy the grim tyranny of this age, do you not? You mock its foundations. You spread the glorious cancer of doubt. My master can grant you the means to do so on a scale you cannot imagine. The herald gestured, and the air rippled, showing a vision of a world, not a hive, but a beautiful, pristine imperial world, all white marble and gold. Ponce, this is Viridia Prime, the heart of the Segmentum's bureaucratic machine. It is the most boring, most orderly, most soul-crushingly rigid planet in the Imperium. It is also the most vulnerable. Deadpool stared at the vision. He saw rows of scribes, mountains of parchment, and a system so vast and complex it had become a god in its own right. The Administratum. Let me guess, Deadpool said. You want me to go there and, what, file a complaint in the wrong bin? 'Cause a paper cut epidemic? Why, I want you to kill it, plus, the herald said, its psychic voice dripping with gleeful malice. Plus not with weapons, with an idea. The Imperium is a machine that runs on faith and paperwork. Shatter one and the other collapses. Go to Viridia. Introduce them to chaos. Not my master's chaos. Your chaos. The chaos of a joke nobody understands. The chaos of a question with no answer. Be the punchline to a universe that has forgotten how to laugh. A scroll of shimmering light appeared in the air before Deadpool. It was a contract, written in shifting, psychedelic script that hurt to look at. A contract? With a chaos god? Yeah, no. I've seen enough movies to know how that ends. You get cool powers for a bit, then you grow tentacles and your skin falls off. Hard pass. So this is not a contract for your soul. It is a simple business proposition, A quest. You are a mercenary, are you not? My master is offering payment. The herald gestured again, and the vision shifted to show a small, shimmering device, plus a dimensional key, capable of punching a hole through the veil between realities. It could send you home. Deadpool went very still. Home. The concept was so distant, it felt like someone else's memory. His own messed up world, with its own messed up problems, but problems he understood. Problems where a well-placed bullet or a poorly timed joke could actually solve something. He looked from the vision of the boring, orderly world to the promise of escape. The calculus was simple. He could stay here, being hunted until the Inquisition finally found a way to contain him permanently, all while leaving a trail of innocent corpses in his wake. Or he could do what he did best: cause beautiful, catastrophic chaos for a paying client. The most boring planet. Huh, Deadpool said slowly. And I just ruin their day? Sun make their certainty, break their rhythm. Let the galaxy see that the mighty Imperium can be brought to its knees, not by a legion of demons, but by a single, unkillable fool. Deadpool looked at the contract. He thought about the pyre, the sisters of battle, the burning hab blocks. He thought about Halbrecht's absolute, unshakable certainty. He reached out and took the shimmering scroll. It felt like holding solidified electricity. Fine, Deadpool said, his voice flat. You've got yourself a Merc. But if this key is a dud, I'm coming back here and I'm going to find you, and I'm going to shove that fancy bird helmet so far up your... Was the terms are acceptable? Was? The herald interrupted, its form already beginning to dissolve back into motes of light. Paul's transportation has been arranged. A sympathetic rogue trader owes my master a favor. Do try to make it entertaining. The great conspirator so enjoys a good story. The herald vanished. The cold lifted. In the silence that followed, broken only by the distant crackle of inquisitorial flames, Deadpool stared at the contract in his hand. He'd just made a deal with a literal devil for a chance to go home. And the price was to destroy a world not with weapons, but with laughter. He crumpled the psychic parchment in his fist. It dissolved into nothingness. Well, he said to the empty tower, time to go be the apocalypse for a bunch of paper pushers. This is either the best idea I've ever had or the absolute worst. The line is real blurry these days. He looked down at the burning hive below, at the empire of fear and faith that had tried to break him. You wanted a heretic? He whispered. I'll give you a heresy you won't forget. The ship was called the Starlight's Penance, a rogue trader vessel that had seen better centuries. Its corridors were a mix of gilded opulence and patched-up decay, the air thick with the smell of incense, ozone, and human sweat. The crew gave Deadpool a wide berth, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and reverence. They thought he was a sanctioned operative of their mysterious patron, a notion he did nothing to correct. He stood on the bridge now, watching the swirl of the Imperium through the armored viewport. The warp was a screaming, psychedelic nightmare of color and sensation that should have driven any sane man mad. Deadpool just found it tacky. Bit much, isn't it? He said to the ship's navigator, a withered figure encased in a life support throne, a third eye glaring balefully from his forehead. All the screaming pink and angry green could use a few more earth tones, maybe a nice beige. The navigator did not respond, his consciousness fully extended into the hellscape outside, guiding the ship on its blasphemous course. Their destination was Viridia Prime, the bureaucratic heart of the Scaris sector. A world without weapons, without major defenses, whose only product was information. Endless, soul-crushing streams of it. The planet was a fortress of data, protected not by walls of adamantium, but by walls of procedure, precedent, and meticulously filed forms. It was the perfect target. The ship's captain, a haggard man named Valerius, with haunted eyes, approached him. "We will emerge from the warp in 6 hours. My patron has provided you with identification. You will be a newly assigned data adept, transferred from a hive world recently consumed by tyrannids. Your records are, for all intents and purposes, flawless." Flawless, huh? Deadpool took the data slate, scrolling through his new identity. Adept Poulet, classified as eccentric but efficient, suffers from a vocal tic disorder that manifests as inappropriate commentary. Wow, you guys really did your homework. It is what was requested, Valerius said stiffly. A cover that explains your behavior while granting you access to the lower data vaults. What you do there is your affair. My duty ends at your delivery. Relax, Captain. I'm not going to get your ship blown up. Probably. Deadpool clapped the man on the shoulder, making him flinch. Just think of me as a cultural attaché. I'm here to bring a little levity. 6 hours later, the Starlight's pennant shuddered as it tore itself back into reality. Viridia Prime hung in the void below them, a pristine marble of white and blue, crisscrossed with the faint lights of orbital elevators carrying data chits the size of buildings. There were no defensive platforms, no patrol fleets. Why would there be? The planet was meaningless to any conventional foe. Its destruction would be an inconvenience, not a victory. Deadpool, now clad in the simple gray robes of a low-ranking adept, descended via a cargo shuttle to the planet's surface. The city, known only as the Archivum, was a silent, sprawling complex of white stone and black glass. The only sounds were the whisper of anti-grav pallets stacked high with parchment, the soft clicking of data quills, and the distant, rhythmic chanting of scribes reciting litanies of accuracy as they worked. He was processed through security with board efficiency. A servo skull scanned his forged documents, a robed official with glassy eyes stamped his papers, and he was ushered into the labyrinthine halls of the grand catacombs of data. Miles upon miles of shelves stretched into the gloom, stacked with parchment, data slates, and crystalline storage units. Millions of adepts moved through the silence, their faces pale and vacant, their lives dedicated to the endless tasks of filing, cross-referencing, and auditing. The air was dry and smelled of dust and ozone. Deadpool was assigned a cubicle in subsection Theta Gamma 7. His duty to verify the resource requisition forms for a long-forgotten Imperial Guard regiment stationed on a world that had probably been swallowed by the warp centuries ago. He sat down, looked at the mountain of parchment before him, and smiled. For the first week, he was a model adept. He processed forms with startling, almost supernatural speed. His vocal tic disorder was noted but tolerated. His muttered comments about "this guy's handwriting" and "who orders this much corpse starch" were filed as minor eccentricities. He was efficient, and in the administratum, efficiency was next to godliness. He began to learn the system. He saw how a single misplaced decimal point could divert a shipment of lasguns to a pleasure world. He saw how a misspelled planet name could consign an entire subsector to bureaucratic oblivion, cutting them off from tithe collections and Astra Militarum support. The entire Imperium was balanced on a house of cards maintained by sleep-deprived clerks, and he began to make improvements. It started small. On Form A38-B, the request for sanctioned psychers, he added a new field: preferred snack for trans-dimensional travel. He coded it to be a mandatory field. The first few times it came back, the confused responses from other departments were simply filed away, creating a new, nonsensical data point. Then he rewrote the help text for the standard heresy reporting form, Inquisition 7. The new text read, "Please describe the heresy in detail. Does it involve A. questioning authority, B. unapproved fashion choices, C. unsanctioned humor, D. all of the above? Please attach visual evidence if available, Yigar, suspiciously colorful clothing." He introduced new forms. Form DP1, request for mandatory humor break. Form DP2, chimichanga requisition and justification. He buried them deep in the system, cross-referencing them with obscure edicts from millennia past, giving them the sheen of legitimacy. The system, designed to process information without question, began to digest his nonsense. A regiment on the front lines received a shipment of whoopee cushions instead of plasma grenades. A particularly zealous Inquisitor found his request for a new starship delayed until he completed a comedy proficiency exam. A missionary on a feral world was baffled to receive a crate of whoopee cushions and a directive to spread the divine laughter of the Emperor. The errors were noticed, of course. But the administratum's solution to error was not to find the source, but to create new procedures to manage the error. They created forms to report the anomalous forms. They established committees to investigate the committees that had approved the anomalous forms. Deadpool sat in his cubicle, watching the beautiful chaos unfold through the internal data feeds. The great, grinding machine of the Imperium was developing a stutter. A hiccup of absurdity in the relentless rhythm of Grimdark. He wasn't firing a shot. He wasn't swinging a sword. He was typing. And with every keystroke, he was proving the Herald's thesis. The most dangerous weapon in the universe was a stupid question asked at the right time, in the right place. A senior adept, his face a mask of profound confusion, approached Deadpool's cubicle holding a data slate. Adept Pule, this directive regarding the Taco Tuesday implementation across the Adeptus Terra. It cites an obscure ruling from the Age of Apostasy. Is this correct? Deadpool looked up from his work, his eyes innocent behind his mask. The archives are very thorough, sir. I'd hate to question the wisdom of our predecessors. It must be the will of the Emperor. The adept stared at the slate, his worldview visibly cracking. The will of the Emperor for tacos? His ways are mysterious, Deadpool said solemnly. As the adept walked away, shaking his head, Deadpool allowed himself a real, genuine smile. This wasn't just destruction. This was art. He was painting the Grimdark galaxy with the colors of comedy, and the picture was gloriously, blasphemously stupid. The first tremors of his work were now rippling out from Viridia Prime, a wave of bureaucratic confusion that would soon lap at the shores of 1,000,000 worlds. The Inquisition was hunting a monster in the Underhive. They had no idea the monster was already at the heart of their empire, and he was having the time of his life. The tremor began not with a bang, but with a misfiled form. A routine ammunition requisition for the Cadian 101st was accidentally cross-referenced with Deadpool's experimental Form DP4, Combat Appropriate Joke Registry. Instead of frag grenades, the regiment received several crates of novelty rubber chickens with a directive to utilize for tactical morale deployment. This was the crack. Then, the dam broke. On a Forge world, Amagos received a command, buried in layers of legitimate-looking data, to recalibrate all production line hymnals to the tune of "Never Gonna Give You Up" for 12 hours. The forges of Mars rang with a heresy so bizarre the tech priests couldn't even classify it. On a Battlefleet Obscurus flagship, a vessel's entire internal communication system was replaced with sound bites of Deadpool's running commentary from his various fights, spliced together from inquisitorial servo skull recordings. For a full day, the crew received orders in a voice that called them fascist nerds and complained about the lack of decent takeout. The Viridian glitch was no longer a glitch. It was a pandemic of absurdity, spreading through the Imperium's data streams like a virus. And at the center of the contagion, Deadpool had graduated from his cubicle. He'd used a combination of forged credentials, blackmailed system access codes, and pure audacity to get himself assigned to the Scriptorum Magnificat, the central processing hub for the entire archivum. He stood now before the master of the Scriptorum, an ancient, wizened man named Procurator General Caleb, whose body was more mechadendrite than flesh. The Procurator's single organic eye was wide with a horror that transcended the physical. The system is vomiting nonsense, Caleb whispered, his voice a dry rustle. Tithe reports are being filed in haiku. Patrol routes are being redrawn to spell out profane words in High Gothic. A request from Lord Inquisitor Halbrecht himself for all data on the red-suited heretic was just returned with a single word: LOL. Deadpool, standing at parade rest, nodded gravely. A most perplexing corruption, Procurator. It seems the machine spirit has developed a sense of humor. This is no laughing matter, Adept Poulet. Caleb shrieked, a mechadendrite slamming against his console. The foundations of reality are built upon data. If the data becomes unreliable, reality becomes unreliable. Faith itself is a form of data. We are witnessing the unraveling of the imperial truth. Perhaps, Deadpool said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Perhaps the system has become too rigid, too grim. Maybe it needs a little chaos. Caleb's eye fixed on him. Chaos? You speak the word so lightly. That is the province of the great enemy. Is it? Deadpool gestured to the main hololith, where the data streams were visibly fraying, sprouting nonsensical subroutines and recursive joke algorithms. Look at it. This isn't the work of demons. There are no 8-pointed stars, no mutations. This is something else. Something the Imperium has no defense against because it has no category for it. He leaned in, his mask inches from the Procurator's face. What if the Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, is trying to tell us something? What if 10,000 years of unyielding Grimdark is the real heresy? What if the true path to salvation is a halfway decent punchline? Procurator Caleb stared, his mechanical parts whirring in distress. The logic was insane. It was heretical. But it was the only logic being presented that even attempted to explain the catastrophe unfolding around them. The human mind, faced with an impossible reality, will cling to any explanation, no matter how flawed. You think this is divine will? Caleb breathed, the concept so alien it barely formed. His ways are mysterious, Deadpool said, echoing his own earlier words. Maybe he's just tired of everyone being so damn serious all the time. It was at that moment the alarms finally sounded. Not the soft chimes of a system error, but the wailing shriek of an external assault alert. The hololith flickered, and the image of a furious, familiar face filled the screen. Inquisitor Halbrecht. His ship, the Righteous Fury, had just blasted its way past the minimal orbital defenses. Procurator Caleb! Halbrecht's voice boomed through the scriptorum. You harbor the most dangerous heretic in the segmentum. The creature you know as Adept Poulet is the source of the corruption. He is a xeno-heretic anomaly, and I am here to excise him." Caleb looked from the raging Inquisitor on the screen to the calmly standing Deadpool. The cognitive dissonance was too much. His world of pure, ordered data was collapsing into a screaming farce. He said it was the Emperor's will. Caleb stammered into his vox. "He lies," Halbrecht roared. "He is a creature of pure mockery. His very existence is a toxin to reality. Secure him, Caleb. Now!" Deadpool didn't wait. He drew the 2 last pistols he had concealed beneath his robes. "Sorry, Caleb. The 5-year plan for comedy integration hits a bit of a snag." He didn't shoot the Procurator. Instead, he shot the main data conduit behind him. The hololith exploded in a shower of sparks. The scriptorum was plunged into emergency lighting, strobes of red cutting through the gloom. All across Viridia Prime, the flow of information stuttered and died. The Imperium's bureaucratic heart had just suffered a catastrophic infarction. Deadpool ran. He burst out of the scriptorum and into the main thoroughfare, a vast, vaulted chamber where tens of thousands of adepts were frozen in place. The sudden silence and darkness more terrifying than any invasion. Halbrecht's voice echoed from the city's public address system, usurped by his ship's powerful voxcasters. "People of Viridia, the creature among you is a plague. It seeks to destroy you not with weapons, but with lies. It will make you question your faith. It will make you laugh at your duty. Do not listen. Do not look at it. The path of doubt leads only to damnation." Deadpool, meanwhile, had climbed onto a stalled anti-grav pallet loaded with parchment. He raised his arms. "Don't listen to him. He's just mad because I made his request for backup come with a mandatory knock-knock joke attachment." His voice, amplified by a stolen voxhailer, rang through the hall. "He says doubt leads to damnation. I say certainty leads to burning people alive for asking questions. Who's the real monster here?" Adepts looked from one to the other. The absolute, unquestioning faith that was the bedrock of their lives was being stress-tested in real time. Some fell to their knees, praying. Others stared at Deadpool with something new in their eyes. Not faith, not heresy, but confusion. And confusion was the fertile ground where doubt grew. Stormtroopers in the colors of Halbrecht's personal guard rappelled from the ceiling, their hell guns blazing. Deadpool dove from his podium, the shots obliterating the pallet and sending a confetti storm of official forms into the air. The battle was joined, but it was unlike any the Imperium had ever fought. Deadpool moved through the chaos, not just shooting back, but talking. Constantly talking. "See? This is what I mean. Ask a question, get a bullet. Is that any way to run a galaxy?" He shot a stormtrooper in the leg. "I'm not even killing you, because I'm a reasonable guy." He kicked over a shelf, sending 1,000 years of tax records cascading onto a squad. "This is what you're protecting? Paperwork? This is worth dying for. It's not even interesting paperwork." He was a whirlwind of violence and comedy, and with every word, he chipped away at the grimdark certainty that surrounded him. A young scribe, hiding behind a pillar, actually let out a choked giggle when Deadpool disarmed a trooper and handed him back his weapon with a "no hard feelings, buddy." It was a tiny sound, but in the silent, horrified hall, it was as loud as a gunshot. Halbrecht heard it. He saw the look on the scribe's face. He saw the same look mirrored on a dozen other faces. They weren't just scared. They were amused. The Inquisitor's face, visible now as he strode into the hall with his retinue, was a mask of pure, undiluted fury. He wasn't just fighting a heretic, he was fighting an idea. And the idea was winning. "You see?" Halbrecht screamed, firing his bolt pistol at Deadpool, the rounds chewing great chunks out of the marble floor. "You see the poison? It spreads with a laugh. Suffer not the witch to live. Suffer not the joke to be told." Deadpool, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still moving, still healing, met Halbrecht's eyes across the chaotic hall. He gave a jaunty, blood-streaked wave. "Hey, Halbrecht. How many Inquisitors does it take to change a glow globe?" He paused for effect, dodging another bolt round. "None. They just declare the darkness heresy and burn the room down." The joke was terrible, but in the context of the Imperium, it was revolutionary. And as Deadpool vanished into the service corridors, leaving a trail of blood, laughter, and broken dogma in his wake, Halbrecht knew with sickening certainty that he had not just failed to contain a threat, he had unleashed it upon the entire Imperium. The service corridor led down, deep into the planetary crust, to a place not even the administratum fully mapped. The geothermal core, where ancient machinery harnessed the world's heart for power. The air grew thick with heat and the thrum of immense generators. Deadpool staggered, his body a canvas of freshly healed pink tissue and drying blood. The regenerative strain was becoming cumulative. Each healing took longer, leaving him more drained. This universe was fighting his very biology, taxing the impossible with relentless, grimdark physics. Behind him, the methodical thunder of Halbrecht's pursuit echoed. The Inquisitor had stopped broadcasting. The time for proclamations was over. Now, it was only the hunt. Deadpool burst into the core chamber, a cathedral-sized space dominated by a colossal plasma reactor. Its heart a contained sun roaring behind layers of adamantium shielding. Conduits large enough to march a titan through snaked up the walls, feeding power to the entire archivum. This was the source, the beating heart of the bureaucracy he had just thrown into cardiac arrest. There was nowhere left to run. The chamber had only one entrance, now blocked by Halbrecht and his remaining stormtroopers. The Inquisitor stepped forward, his face a granite mask of finality. His armor was scorched, his coat torn. He looked every one of his 70 years, and then some. "It ends here, abomination," Halbrecht said, his voice quiet yet carrying over the reactor's roar. "There is no more galaxy for you to corrupt. Your joke ends now." Deadpool turned, his shoulders slumping not in defeat, but in exhaustion. The dimensional key that Cianchi and Harold had promised felt like a lie in his pocket. There was no rogue trader extraction here. This was the end of the line. "You just don't get it, do you?" Deadpool said, his voice raspy. "It was never about corruption. It was about perspective. You people are trapped in a story where everyone has to be miserable all the time, and you call it strength. I was just trying to add a footnote, a little author's note in the margins that says, 'Hey, this might be a bit much.' Your footnote has crippled a sector," Halbrecht roared, gesturing wildly with his bolt pistol. "Your author's note will lead to billions dead as supply lines fail and commands are misinterpreted. You have not brought enlightenment, creature. You have brought anarchy. And you brought a flamer to a philosophy debate." Deadpool shot back, a spark of his old energy returning. "That's the whole problem. You see a different idea, and your only response is to burn it. You're not protecting humanity, Halbrecht. You're protecting a system that grinds humanity into dust and calls it piety." He took a step toward the reactor, the heat blistering even his healing skin. "You want to stop me? To stop the glitch? Go ahead. But you can't unthink a thought. You can't unhear a joke. I'm in your data streams now. I'm in the heads of every scribe who heard me ask, why? The seed is planted. You can burn this body. But the idea that things don't have to be this way, that's a ghost you'll never exorcise. Halbrecht's finger tightened on the trigger. His stormtroopers took aim. This was it. The final, fiery punchline. But Deadpool didn't give them the satisfaction. He looked past Halbrecht, at the stormtroopers, at the implacable certainty in their eyes, and he made a choice. He had two options. He could fight and die, and let his death become another grimdark legend of the Inquisition's ultimate victory over heresy. Or he could do something else. Something this universe wouldn't know how to process. He lowered his weapons. He let them clatter to the floor. Then he started to laugh. It wasn't a manic cackle or a mocking jeer. It was a deep, genuine, heartfelt laugh of pure, unadulterated absurdity. He laughed at the reactor, at the Inquisitor, at the sheer, ridiculous horror of the 41st millennium. He laughed until tears streamed down his scarred cheeks. The sound echoing strangely in the vast chamber, competing with the roar of the plasma core. The stormtroopers hesitated, their aim wavering. They had been trained to face screams of defiance, prayers to dark gods, even the silent stoicism of the Xenos. They had no training for this. "Look at us," Deadpool wheezed, gesturing between himself and Halbrecht. "Look at this. This is the grand finale. The unkillable jester versus the unstoppable zealot, in a room that powers a planet made of paperwork. This isn't a tragedy. This is a comedy sketch written by a god with a really, really dark sense of humor." Halbrecht stared, his certainty faltering for a single, crucial second. The creature wasn't fighting. It wasn't begging. It was appreciating the narrative. It was breaking the fourth wall of reality itself and critiquing the script. "Open fire!" Halbrecht screamed, but the command lacked its previous conviction. As the stormtroopers fired, Deadpool didn't try to dodge. He turned and took a running leap toward the reactor's main energy conduit, a massive pipe glowing with raw power. Las beams and bolt rounds tore into his back, shredding tissue and bone. But his healing factor, pushed to its absolute limit, focused on one final, impossible task. He hit the conduit, not to damage it, but to embrace it. He channeled every ounce of his regenerative energy, every bit of his anomalous, narrative-bending life force, into the machine. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire archivum flickered. Every screen, every data slate, every lumen in every corridor from the highest spire to the deepest vault didn't just go dark. They flashed with a single, simple, universally understood emoticon. It lasted for only a second. Then the power stabilized, the screens returned to their grim data feeds, and the lights came back on. But in that second, across an entire world, 1 billion people saw it. A symbol of happiness. A simple, stupid smiley face. In a universe where there was only war, it was the most subversive act imaginable. When the light from the conduit faded, Deadpool was gone. No body, no ash, no trace. He had poured the last of his unnatural life into the system. And the system, for one glorious second, had smiled back. Halbrecht stood in the sudden silence. The only sound the hum of the reactor and the confused breathing of his men. He had won. The heretic was destroyed. The anomaly was purged. But as he looked around at the faces of his stormtroopers, he saw it. Not heresy. Not corruption. But a question. A tiny, lingering doubt in the back of their eyes, as ephemeral and persistent as a ghost. They had witnessed something that shouldn't be. Not a demon, not a Xenos. but a man who had chosen to become a joke rather than a martyr. And a joke, once heard, can never be truly forgotten. The war for the Imperium's soul was over. The war for its sense of humor had just begun. Deadpool was erased, but his echo remained, a psychic scar on the fabric of the 41st millennium. The Viridian glitch was officially recorded as a minor Tsentian plot, contained and purged by the heroic forces of Inquisitor Halbrecht. The data was corrected, the forms re-established, the grim status quo restored. Unofficially, things had changed. A new low-level heresy began to appear in the darker corners of the Imperium, one the Ordo Hereticus struggled to classify. It wasn't the worship of chaos gods. It wasn't Xenos sympathy. They called it the Chuckle Cult, or the Whispering Jest. Its adherents didn't meet in secret to chant or sacrifice. They met to tell terrible, subversive jokes. They scribbled smiley faces in the margins of official documents. They questioned not the Emperor's divinity, but the absolute, joyless certainty of his servants. It was a heresy of nuance, and it was infinitely harder to root out than demon worship. You can burn a cultist, but how do you burn a punchline? Inquisitor Halbrecht spent the rest of his career hunting the remnants of Deadpool's influence, a ghost he could never quite catch. He died an old man, victorious in 1,000 battles, but haunted by the sound of laughter in the dark. And somewhere, in the infinite expanse of the multiverse, a scarred man in a red and black suit woke up with a gasp. He was lying on a familiar couch in his own messy apartment. In his hand, he clutched a small, melted piece of metal, all that remained of the dimensional key. He sat up, groaning. Every cell in his body ached with the phantom pain of 1,000 deaths. He looked around at the mundane chaos of his home, at a world where the biggest threat was a missed deadline or a villain with a stupid name. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the New York skyline. It was messy, flawed, and sometimes terrible. But it wasn't Grimdark. A slow smile spread across his face. "Okay," Wade Wilson said to the empty room. "Note to self, fascist space empires are a hard crowd. Next time, I'm bringing a bigger writer's room." He had failed to destroy Warhammer 40K, but in trying, he had irrevocably changed it. He had proven that even in the darkest future, a little laughter could be the most powerful weapon of all. And for a mercenary with a messed up sense of humor, that felt an awful lot like a win.